Attention all personnel. Incoming podcast. This is MASH Matters.
Gentlemen, Chef Paul Conway, fresh from Cafe Pierre, New York.
I'm glad you like it. Boy, it's fun to cook again.
Oh, this food is miraculous. What are you doing tossing grenades instead of salad?
I told the personnel people I was a cook, and they make me a rifleman.
See? You should have lied. I'm a plumber. Look where they put me.
Yeah, so far it's worked fine. Hardly any of his patients ever spring a leak.
And I do my best honest, but I'm such a rotten soldier. Whenever I'm carrying my rifle, the guys will never get near me.
But put a spatula in his hand, he's Toscanini.
Yeah, I'm comfortable in the kitchen.
Might say he's at home on the range.
That is a clip from the Season 8 episode, Too Many Cooks. And today on MASH Matters, we do have too many cooks because we will have two cooks on this episode. Not only will we have Private Igor, Jeff Maxwell, but also Private Conway, Ed Begley Jr.
That is too many cooks. I think we should cut it down to one cook, frankly. And you know who I think should be the cook, don't you?
You know, you two can battle this out in some kind of cage match, creamed weenies at dawn. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Well, I think he was a good cook. I was a bad cook.
That's true.
So I think the bad cook wins because that's more apropos of the Army.
That's true.
Armies don't have a good cook in them. They happen to have a bad cook. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get excited. It's going to be okay.
It is going to be fine. We had a great talk with Ed Begley Jr. talking about his career and his activism and also his stint on MASH. And he was only on the one episode, but his character was the main plot line of that particular episode. So it was a real thrill to talk to him because Jeff, I've been a fan of this guy for as long as I can remember.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Me too. I mean, all these movies and the television shows he's done, been working for a long time, doing really good stuff. The favorite movies that I have, he was in, was all the improv movies with like A Mighty Wind and Best in Show and things.
Yes.
Oh my God.
The Christopher Guest movies. Yes.
Christopher Guest movies. On the floor.
Love them.
Put me on the floor.
Yeah.
And he reveals a little bit about some of that stuff in our interview.
He does.
He's really cool.
From an early age, I watched Saint Elsewhere on NBC, and he was, one of the main characters on that series, and he talks about that. But yeah, if you go to his IMDb page, I'm going to warn you, your hand will probably start cramping as you scroll through his page because it just keeps going and going and going. He has done so much. Not only are the shows where he is, a featured player, but also these guest appearances on so many shows where he'll do 1 episode, 2 episodes, 3 episodes. And most recently, you see him in a recurring role on Young Sheldon.
Yeah.
It was just a real treat to talk with somebody that I've admired for a long, long time.
Me too. And not only show business, but, he puts his money where his mouth is in terms of, quote, activism. And this is activism in the best way of trying to preserve our country and our electricity and our whatever we're trying to preserve.
The environment.
I'm sorry. Yes, the environment. Good word. He was, he started, cooking out in the back with, putting tinfoil and reflecting it off the sun or whatever, and the sun off the tinfoil and cooking stuff like that. But that was a long time ago. But he started doing that with his own home and, riding bikes back and forth to places and doing things like that really, he, as I said, he put his money where his mouth, or his mouth where his money, or one of those things. He put it all there.
His mouth and his money are in the same place. Let's just say that.
Both places, yes. And it's kind of confusing to his agent, actually, but it doesn't matter. But he really walks the walk. He really does. That's very respectful. So a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I do this, I do that, but don't really do it. He does.
Right.
And he's passionate about it and serious about it. I have a lot of respect for him.
So there's good things about Zoom and there's not so good things about Zoom. The audio at times is a little glitchy because, well, Zoom. I think the pandemic has all taught us that Zoom is great when it works, and when the internet's not cooperating, sometimes it's not. So there might be a few places that he might drop out here and there. But what was cool about being on Zoom is you get to see him. Not only was I here sitting on the computer talking and seeing Ed Begley Jr., over his shoulder was his dad's Oscar. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
His dad, won an Oscar,
yeah.
Ed Begley Jr. And I don't think I've ever seen somebody just having a nice conversation when they have an Oscar sitting over their shoulder. That was a little surreal.
Yeah. Yeah. And his father was such a great actor too. My gosh.
Oh my goodness. Yes. If
come
you
with
have not
that
seen
kind of-
12 Angry Men with Ed Begley Sr.,
go watch it. Watch it 2 or 3 times. You'll see more stuff. On the third time, you'll still see stuff that you didn't see in the first 2 times.
Yes.
Now, you said you were sitting on your computer. Was that a painful experience, or was that something? What happened to the? Is it working still? I mean,
well, without further ado, let's check in with our friend Ed Begley Jr.
Well, Ed, we bumped into each other at that autograph show in Burbank,
right?
And I ran over to you and said, "Come on, be on the podcast. You got to be on the podcast." Instead of saying, "Get away from me," you said, "Okay," which very appreciated.
Happy to do it. I loved my one brief episode on MASH. I was a big fan from the beginning of the show, and there are other connections between me and Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds and Alan and Mike and the whole gang. So
yeah,
it was a joy to do that. In 1979, I did my one episode.
Indeed. Yeah. The title of which was, Ryan, what was the title?
Too Many Cooks.
Too Many Cooks.
Too Many Cooks, yeah. And, I have to pick a little bone with you. There you were, dressed like Private Igor Straminsky dressed in 90% of his appearances. I know show business is a dog-eat-dog world, but come on.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Those wardrobe people are out of control on that show.
Well, you've done so many wonderful television shows and movies, including, was St. Elsewhere your kind of first big kind of deal?
That was my big break. I'd been an actor at that point 15 years, in 1982.
Yeah. When
I auditioned for the part, it was a series regular. His name was Dr. Peter White, an actor I'd never heard of. Terrence Knox got the part. I did not. They threw me a bone and gave me a very small part called Ehrlich. It just had 2 lines in the pilot, I think. But then that somehow got their attention. Not somehow, I know how. Bill Daniels. Bill Daniels is of a certain height, and so am I. Very different heights. It's Mutt and Jeff. And so he started berating me in one of the scenes they had written. I don't know if they really had written it knowing, Ed's really tall and he's shorter, and it'll be funny, and it'll be intimidating. And it was all that and more. So they enjoyed writing for those characters. They certainly enjoyed writing for Bill Daniels long before they ever started shooting. They, like me, worshiped Bill Daniels, wonderful actor. I got that regular part as a result of dear Bill Daniels, really, and his willingness to work with this tall blonde geek. What's interesting, though, I'll tell you an interesting thing. The part that I wanted, Dr. Peter White, played by Terrence Knox, wonderful guy. I loved him. He was a very good actor, too. That part in season 2, I believe, of St. Elsewhere, maybe season 3 at the furthest, but I think season 2, gets shot by Ellen Brie. He turned out to be the St. Pelagius rapist, and she shoots him first in the chest and then a bit lower than that, maybe the other way around. Yeah, shoots first down, in the erogenous zone.
Oh, yeah. Bad zone to be in, really.
And then he gets shot in the chest and he's gone. That was the part I wanted, and I didn't get that. As always, what I wanted was nowhere near as good as what I've gotten in this lifetime.
Wow. Well, that show too was kind of, you talk about some of the actors that were on that show between Bill Daniels and Norman Lloyd and
Ed Flanders,
who had a MASH connection. He had a guest appearance on MASH as well.
Denzel Washington had done.
And a guy named G.W. Bailey.
Wonderful G.W. Bailey. Wonderful actor.
Yeah.
David Morris, a terrific actor. Christina Pickles.
Yes.
Bonnie Bartlett. Jennifer Savage. Ellen Brie.
Yeah.
Cynthia Sykes, wonderful, all of them.
Yes.
Barbara Winnery, what a joy to work with that kind of talent.
It's too bad for your first big break you couldn't have gotten onto something a little bit more interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, too bad.
When you're in a show like that, I'm going to make a statement, but I think it's true. I haven't seen it otherwise. You're guaranteed work the rest of your life. Now, it may not be starring in movies or TV shows. It could be dinner theater, but you're guaranteed acting work for the rest of your life. If you're on a Hill Street Blues or St. Elsewhere or some show like that runs 6 years or more, as St. Elsewhere ran full 6, you're always going to work. It'd be, in my good fortune, continuing to work doing guest star stuff and a few starring roles in films and television. So I'm very, very lucky. And it's all as a result of Bruce Paltrow liking my character that was a nothing character and turning it into something. Bruce Paltrow did that for me.
Wow. Very cool. I noticed in reading some of the material about you that I didn't know this, but you were a comedy team with Michael Richards. Is that right?
We went to college together at LA Valley College in the San Fernando Valley. And he was very funny. Everybody at Valley College was doing Michael Richards impressions, trying to emulate his many characters. He had a lot of characters and alter egos back then. Somehow one night he was doing improv and being funny in front of everybody, and he somehow included me in it. I jumped in. I don't remember what happened, and it clicked. And so we wound up going on stage at the Troubadour with no preparation. We went up there and we did very well at the Troubadour. It was 1969, and we thought we had invented improv. We didn't know Viola Spolin about it, people at Second City and the Committee and elsewhere, and all the Compass players. They were all doing it for years, and so we did it for a while. Michael wound up getting drafted. He went in the Army, so I tried it on my own, and then he, of course, came back and eventually started up again on his own himself, and boy, did he do good. He got a big manager within a few months, coming back to LA eventually in 1979, I think it was. Got a starring role in a series with Larry David called Fridays, the LA version of Saturday Night Live, but it was on Friday Live instead of Saturday. And he was very funny on that. And I guess Larry David remembered him a few years later in a little show called Seinfeld. And you know the rest.
Well, speaking of other Larrys, you said that you had connections with Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds. Can you expand a little bit on that and tell us a little bit about your background with those guys?
MASH was a success. It was in its second or third year, I think second year. So they decided to do kind of not so much a spinoff because it was years before MASH. It was called Rollout, and it was about the Red Ball Express. That was an African-American military unit in World War II that did mostly trucking, getting different truckloads of people and parts and medicine to different parts of the war in Europe. So I played a lieutenant, kind of clueless young person who somehow makes the grade of lieutenant.
Hey, kid, what are you going to get your parents for Christmas?
Oh, I guess I'll just send them each a nice letter.
Each of them? Oh, yeah. You're from a broken home.
I've never been too fond of Christmas, sir.
Why not?
I was always in military school, and each year my parents would fight over who was going to get me for the holidays. Somehow I'd wind up alone, riding on a train at Christmas. To this day, I still cry when I see a conductor.
And it was very funny. It was Val Vasolio. Oh, God, who all was in that? Billy Hicks was in it. Who's the star? I'll think of his name in a second. He was very funny. Garrett Morse was in it, too, for a few episodes. There's a comic who was a star, but I can't think of his name, but I will later. But it was great fun. And Larry Gelbart wrote the episodes with a writing team. They had a writing staff, as they always do. But the great Larry Gelbart wrote A Funny Thing Happened the Way to the Forum, the book for that, and many other wonderful things. He producer and writer on the show, and Gene Reynolds was very involved. So I did 13 episodes of that. And then sadly, that was the end of it. Didn't get picked up after that.
Was that Stu Gilliam?
Yeah. Stu Gilliam is exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's something I've known my whole life. The name Stu Gilliam, not my whole life, but from 1972 on. And somehow at age 73, I couldn't remember a name.
And your name again? I'm sorry.
I know. I'm Jeff. Jeff Ryan is my name.
So nice meeting you, Mr. Ryan.
You can call me Ryan Jeff.
Yeah. I have to admit here now, Ryan and I are great proponents of improvisation and that kind of world. A million years ago, when I asked Alan Alda, gee, Alan, do you have a really good acting teacher you could recommend? And just so I can get better and better and better. And he said, I have only one, Viola Spolin, but she's in New York. So go up and see if you can get her. She ended up coming out here 2 weeks later and started her work out here.
Great.
And I ran there and spent a couple of years with her. And then it changed my life. It really did.
Yeah.
I loved it. I just, it just fell into my head and said, okay, that's what you do.
It's really the best way to train because we have this notion as comic actors, oh, I got to think of some jokes and I'll try to work those into the improv and all of that. What's really interesting, writers can write their jokes and we can occasionally insert a joke that fits, but the character is the key. To be deep and committed to the is what really is compelling in improv. And Viola knew that well from the earliest days and taught it very well. And that's why people like Michael Richards and Richard Pryor and Lily Tomlin and Jonathan Winters are so great and so successful because they would immerse themselves deep into the character. They weren't just comedians doing one-liners. Richard Pryor would become Mudbone. Lily Tomlin would become the little girl in the big chair, the telephone operator, there's different characters. Jonathan Winters would be Elwood P. Suggins or Marty Frickert, and they'd really commit to it. They would, as good actors, become the characters, and that's what's key, and that's what one of the many fine things that Viola Spolin talked about in her many books.
What is your process when you go into a part? What happens? Can you talk to that, or
I read it just to start to get the rhythm of it. Then I read it again. Then I read it again. When I'm ready for it, I start to run it with my wife or daughter, or a friend perhaps, and get the rhythm of it that way. But then I try to find what is the pain that this character is trying to overcome. And I don't mean it doesn't have to be physical pain. What is the discomfort? What is the emotional pain, the challenge, the angst? Because there was a wonderful acting teacher named Roy London, and he taught in LA for a while. He passed away. But one day I was studying with him, working on a scene for a show I was shooting. He said, you know what I think the most interesting thing to watch, Ed? I said, what's that, Roy? He said, to see how a character deals with pain. Comedy drama, it's kind of universal. How a character deals with pain is what's the most interesting thing to watch. And Jeff, I listened to him, I nodded my head, I thought, what a load of crap. How could this guy, I wrote this guy a check. You want, I'm in pain. Oh, look at me. It's not Garcia Lorca's blooding and I'm in pain. And look at me, it's terrible. What a bunch of baloney. I didn't know he was an idiot. I'm studying with an idiot. And I finished up and I started to drive home and I stopped at a light and I realized that wasn't what he had said at all. He said how a character deals with pain. That's a very different thing. Mm-hmm. How you try to keep the pot, the lid on the pot from boiling over, and how a character does that.
Yeah.
With Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice, and you see what's wrong with this woman, what happened, or something terrible happened with this girl, this woman in the past, and she's trying to keep the lid on it, and then you see the choice she had to make, what the Nazis did to her, and the choice that she had to make, and what that is, and that's very compelling. Comedy is the same thing. Laurel and Hardy are carrying a piano down a flight of stairs, and they fall carrying a piano. Mm-hmm. And then the pieces of the piano fall on them as they fall forward faster than the pieces coming down. Could you imagine what that would be? It's pain. It's terrible. And we're laughing uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Come in to hide his friend, Oliver Norval Hardy. Stan Laurel puts a bucket on his head because he's stuck with his head through this hole in the floor. He puts a bucket on it. And Ben Turpin comes in looking for those two guys who didn't do whatever they were supposed to do. And he's so mad that he can't find Oliver Norval Hardy. He kicks something. What does he kick? The bucket, which is on his head. Imagine having your head through a hole. You were stuck in a hole in the floor, and there's a bucket. A guy kicked it. You kill a person. You could break your neck. But we're laughing because it's not real. It's funny, and that's the thing. And I realized that was a very good way to guide myself. What is the pain? Pain could be conflict. It could be impatience. It could be just a little stone in your shoe, a little burr under the saddle, a small thing or a very big thing like Sophie's Choice. Mm-hmm. That's what I've looked for every scene since. What is the pain? How does my character deal with pain? And finding that, then you can really make something interesting.
Very interesting, because to that point, I'm a huge Christopher Guest fan and have been for a long time. And when you were in Best of Show,
yes,
and you're the manager, and the brilliant Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara are coming, and their credit card is bad. Is that was the joke, wasn't it? The credit card is bad.
Correct.
You're not going to give them a room. But you found them a janitor's.
It's like a supply closet. I find a place in there for them It's real near the kitchen and clean up the stains. And there's a band here that were roasting a goat and couldn't get the smell of cumin out of the grapes.
I don't know if I can tell this. Well, I won't mention names, but we had a rock group come through here, and we saw them coming, so we put down the rubber sheets in the beds, but apparently they weren't aware that there was a toilet in the room, so we had a lot of cleaning to do after they checked out, and roasting a goat in the room, I still to this day don't understand. Getting the smell of cumin and charcoal out of the drapes was a chore unto itself. So that was a big deal. We get an imprint and the credit card for a lot of money now, and we learned from that one.
I was trying to do a little Spinal Tap callback is what I was trying to do with that.
But I watched you so carefully because your eyes, you really felt for them. I felt
100%.
Yeah, you really wanted to help them, but the structure of your job couldn't necessarily do it the way they wanted to do it. So you out a way to do it, but you were so sincere.
Well, that's what I thought was the key to the scene when I read the treatment. All the treatment says that Eugene and Chris wrote. They write a 25-page treatment. That whole scene is based upon this sentence. Jerry and Cookie Fleck tried to check into the hotel. The credit card doesn't work. Period. End of sentence.
That's it.
That's all.
Wow.
So from there you go. And first of all, I thought I'm just going to stay here. Now my job is to be Easter Island or the Statue of Lincoln and just to listen to whatever the hell Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, two people I've worshipped since SCTV and across the desk from. My only job is say nothing or to grow up. That's all I got to do. And to not break out laughing. That's my only job, to be a Marine and take it and just stand there. And I did that successfully somehow.
You did.
And we went into the closet and I did a little more. And Chris was nice enough to let me do all the crazy stuff we did in the closet and what happened. And he's brilliant at directing for so many reasons. He always says, okay, that thing you started with was first, make that third, put that in the middle. The thing near the end, move that to first position and start there. And you realize, oh my God, it's like 100% better the way he's moved these pieces around.
Wow.
He's just hysterically funny.
So is all of that stuff at 90% of it
yes,
improvised, or there is no script?
No, all that stuff that Fred Willard did to Jim Pittick in Best in Show. When poor Jim Pittick is sitting there. And the look on Jim's face is every bit as good as all the incredibly insane things that Fred Willard is saying to him. Because I literally thought, this is how good Jim Pittick is. We all know, I hope we should know how great Fred Willard, the great Fred Willard was and is. He's just brilliant. But Jim Pittick sits there and is same as me trying to do in Best in Show Behind the Desk. He's just trying to, what are these people talking about? What am I, just to not crack up and not react badly. Right. And he does that. He was so good. I thought Jim Pittick was a real announcer from like the dog shows. I thought, how brilliant is Chris Guest? He got a real guy to be opposite Fred Willard, crazy out of his mind, Fred Willard. And you have the dog smoking a pipe, have the little suit on and all that. He's doing all this insane stuff he's saying. And Jim's going, what have I got myself into here? I thought he was a real guy. That's how good he is.
Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
Ed, let's talk about your guest appearance on MASH. Too Many Cooks, season 8, the first episode of the season. One appearance, but it's your character left a mark on MASH fans. So what do you remember about that?
Well, as I said earlier with you, I was a big fan of the show. But the way I heard about the job was like no other job offer I'd ever gotten before. It was a very unusual circumstance. I had gone fishing with my young children, said, let's go fishing. There's a place up where the fishing is great. It's called Wellesley Lake, and we'll go up there. So I went up there and you fly to Whitehorse, then you take a seaplane and you land at this lake and you go fishing, and the fishing's incredible, like nothing you've ever done. So I'm doing that, and there's no way to reach you. There's no phones there. There's no cell phones. 1979, no cell phones. There's nothing. So at some point, there is a radio for emergencies if somebody's injured. And they said, Ed, you've got to go back to 948. The town was called in Yukon Territory 948 because that was the mileage marker on the Alcan Highway. Didn't even have a name, this town.
Wow.
It was like a trading post kind of a store. They didn't have a phone there. There's no landlines there. Again, no cell phones, 1979. No landline phone. They had a radio phone to somewhere, to Whitehorse, I guess, where then there was a person with a phone. So this is Ed, you've got to get to the thing. And I thought, God, were my kids sick? My wife, what have you? I get there. Hi, this is Eric Class for Ed Begley, over. It's my agent. Ed, you have an offer to do a match. When does it work? 3 days from now, over. How much does it pay? Back and forth like that. And so then I said yes to everything. It's MASH. I would have done it if I would have paid them to do it.
Yeah.
And then the story gets even more interesting. Now I get to be in this show MASH. Well, almost not, because the guy wasn't planning on going, but my phone call drew him into town. He went, I'm going to pick up another boat. We need another aluminum to bring it back to the camp at Wellesley Lake. Fine, he knows what he's doing. What he didn't think of is when trying to take off, that boat was in such a position, it took on a tremendous up, like the scoop that it was as we traveled to take off. Wow. All the water that you could imagine. And now the plane is a lot heavier because there's a full-size aluminum boat with water in it. And we literally top of the trees with the boat and the pontoon as he was pulling back in this.
Oh my gosh.
I thought I was going to do a MASH. I'm not going to do that show or any show anymore. I'm dead. I could see the trees were coming. And he somehow and you can't pull back too far, you'll stall. You know enough about flying, you guys do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You pull back, oh God, I got to get it past the trees. Now you're no longer aerodynamic, you're what's called a feathered brick, and the plane just falls in the sky. You can go 75 miles an hour, but at 72, the plane just drops because it's flying. And so we clipped. I went, oh, that's not good, but we didn't damage anything. We made it back. So that was, from that point forward, everything was easy. I learned my lines and I went in. So I'm on the set with Alana, with Mike Farrell and Jamie Farr. I just loved all those guys. I loved Loretta Swit, everybody. I just enjoyed every minute of it. But there was another challenge before me. This was before I'd had that class with Roy London and realized that you need to show how a character deals with pain. I hadn't learned that yet. I'd long ago started to work on a show called Room 212, got comfortable around the camera. I felt at ease. I was relaxed in front of the camera by like 1970 or so. Having been an actor since 67, it took me 3 years to really get relaxed. So now you still had in 1979 a person that's relaxed in front of the camera, snore job.
Yeah.
Who wants to see somebody relaxed? I want to see something interesting. What usually is interesting is how a character deals with pain.
Yeah.
Many other ways that different acting teachers. And I hadn't learned that yet. So they wanted to reshoot my close-up in the scene. And I could tell right away why they wanted to do it. They didn't like what I'd done. When I saw it, they ran the clip for me. I didn't like it either. It was just kind of relaxed, but there was nothing going on. There wasn't enough zip, enough life. I didn't have it. But fortunately, the fear that put me in, I realized for MASH, if I didn't do it better, was perfect. I suddenly had all this adrenaline would have me. My heart was pounding, and I, was in a certain amount of pain because.
Sure.
And so they went, that's fine. They reshot in that way, and they kept it in the show, and I didn't get fired.
Wow.
But I learned a valuable lesson on that. Yeah. They liked me. They were sweet people.
Sure.
But they were going to have to let me go because it just wasn't interesting. I did that for years, worked in shows, and occasionally a director could pull something out of me. But in the original film we shot, he couldn't, like a dentist trying to pull teeth, he couldn't pull a performance out of me. But terrifying conditions when I realized I'm going to get fired.
Oh my God, it must have been devastating. Hey, you have to reshoot your scene.
Yeah.
That's a scary thing for an actor to hear.
Scary.
My God.
But again, it's not like, what bad guy, how could they do that? I was wonderful.
Yeah.
I wasn't wonderful at all. They ran the little clip for me. They had it. And this one today, like you'd run a little video thing, do the playback. They didn't have playback then. They shot with a camera, and then, they looked at the dailies from the day before. They went, what are we going to do with Ed Begley as, Private Conway? We got to talk to him. Let's see if he can do it. And they ran the little clip on like a moviola or something.
Yeah.
One of those film editing things with a picture on one side and the mag stripe sound on the other, ran it for me. And I looked and went, oh, they're not being mean. This sucks. This is terrible. And it was the beginning of me getting better was that day on MASH.
Wow.
My goodness. And Charlie Dubin was a director who was a Pussycat Sweetie Pie.
Charles Dubin I couldn't think of his name. He directed me in another thing too. I did another show. It was Rollout. Charles Dubin directed an episode of that, I believe. And Charles Dubin was directing this one. And he came in to my dressing room first to talk to me. He gave me another shot at it to shoot the scene again. May not have been great, but it was good enough. And I finished up the episode. But they're going to have to let me go.
Wow.
And I didn't blame them one iota.
My goodness. That's a very interesting story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It was inevitable, General. Shea Klinger moves uptown. What? We're a package, sir. Where he goes, I go. Right, buddy? Partners to the end.
Sir, I'm very grateful, but with all due respect, I'd like to go back and cook for my old unit up on the line.
I never met this man before in my life.
Private, you'd rather cook for your buddies in combat than for me?
Yes, I would, sir.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the least he can do after running over them, bumping into them, and falling on top of them.
Usually at the same time.
Yeah, well, that's why I'd like to make it up to the old unit, sir.
How about it, Bud? You always said the boys on the line deserve the best.
Yes, I did, didn't I?
Okay, Conway, I admire your loyalty. You can go back to your old unit. But just one question. Do you deliver?
Listen, we could talk about show business all day long, but I know there's something else very near and dear to your heart. And as I was looking at some of the research about you also, interesting, many years ago, you were on the Environmental Protection Agency Committee. Is that what that was? Did I read that correctly?
I was on a few different, I was the Environmental Affairs Committee for the City of Los Angeles, Environmental Affairs Commission. And I was that for a while, and I've worked with a lot of different groups on the board of many things. But years ago, I started using vinegar and water to clean up, like instead of harsh glass cleaner with ammonia. I started using baking soda instead of Comet or other harsh cleansers. But I thought there must be a better way to make real cleaner, the ones that like Windex or Formula 409 that cleans that good but isn't toxic. And finally, I found it. So now I have a lot of non-toxic products, and they work very well.
Now, do we get a case of them? Just asking. I just wondered.
We're definitely sending you samples. I'm going to make sure Anthony sends you some stuff, pal. No question. Thank you for reminding me.
I know Ryan was hoping for a case. I would back off. I don't need a case, but he wanted a case.
We'll send him a case of Dom Perignon. We just want to make sure he's on our side.
There you go.
Wait, hold everything. Hold everything.
Thank you. And you can buy these products where?
Amazon, it's very easy to get it, or anywhere. Just go Begley Cleaning and it'll come right up. Begley Cleaning Products, edbegley.com. Any of that will lead to it. But just go to any search engine, go Begley Cleaning Products, and it'll pop up. Ours are very good. They clean very, very well. And I also want to give a shout out to my competitors. There's other cleaning what do you call it? Seventh Generation, Ecos. These other companies make green products too. Buy some green products. It doesn't have to be ours. I hope it is ours because I think ours clean better than anybody. But just give them a try, and you're going to have less toxic stuff in your house because people, understandably, are out there, and I'm there with them, protesting a hazardous waste site. The worst hazardous waste site is not near their home. It's in their home, under their sink. We buy it. We let it into our home. We purchase it. It's called cleaning products. And they really could easily be qualified as hazardous waste. So you don't want your kids crawling on the floor, putting their hands in their mouth as kids do, your pets crawling on the floor and putting their paws in their mouth and cleaning themselves with that toxic stuff. Very bad for them. It's bad for adults. It's bad for everybody. Get a non-toxic cleaning product. Try one of them. I think the Begley ones are the best, but give it a shot and see if it works for you.
I'm in. How did you move in that direction? You're a young guy and you're trying to be an actor or a comedian, and all of a sudden you have this passion for the environment. And what happened there? When did that happen?
It was 1970. It was the first Earth Day. I said, this is great getting together here, celebrating Earth Day one day out of 365. But what about the other 364 days in a year? What's the long-term plan? And so they said, we're going to clean up the air and clean up the water. And I knew because I lived in LA, your lungs hurt, 200 days a year, your lungs were killing you. And I knew the water was polluted from the Santa Monica Bay pollution, Santa Barbara oil spill in 1969, from the Cuyahoga River near Cleveland catching fire in 1969. I thought that was a bad sign, rivers catching fire. And so I got involved in 1970 with the first Earth Day, and I've been involved ever since.
Well, thank you for all you do. Thank you for your time today. What is next for you? You're always working. You've been most recently, I think, seen in Young Sheldon, and then you just wrapped Better Call Saul.
Better Call Saul is done. Had a great time on that wonderful, wonderful show. Mm-hmm. And I love Young Sheldon as well. It's a great show to work on in every way. Very successful show for good reason. It's very funny and has a lot of heart. Really a fine show. I did a movie with Christian Bale and Margot Robbie and Bob De Niro and Chris Rock and John David Washington, and that's called Amsterdam.
Wow.
I'm in that. Been working like crazy. I just did a movie with Barbara Hershey up in Portland a couple of weeks ago. So
nice.
My biggest problem is scheduling, which is a good thing to have.
Well, we appreciate you carving a few minutes out of your crazy schedule to spend with us today and talk about your experience with the show called MASH.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
And quite frankly, I am not unhappy that you didn't have a bad time during that MASH production. Otherwise, I may not have remained as Private Igor. So thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Great to see you again, Jeff. Keep up the great everything.
Very nice to see you. Absolutely. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ryan.
I only regret that we did not get his recipe for Spam Parmesan, which was featured in the episode Too Many Cooks. Maybe next time. Maybe when we have him back, we'll do a video cooking show with him.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think that's a good idea at all. Yeah, save the environment, but stay out of the kitchen, all right?
All right, before we sign off, we want to say thank you to a few folks who help support us on Patreon, including, and this is really what I'm about to say, Jeff, Private Cake Mastermind.
Okay, go ahead, do the salute.
No, that's one of our VIPs.
Oh,
Private Cake Mastermind.
All right.
I read them as I see them.
All right. Okay. I'm going to read them as I see them too. Private Karen Stevenson.
Corporal Vincent Puccia.
Corporal Melissa Pepin.
Captain Robert Leave.
Captain Eric Engler.
Captain Brandon Weatherford.
Major Tim Miles.
And Major Paul Lawrence. Thank you for supporting the show. You make these episodes possible, and you too can sign up and become a VIP, mashmatters.com/support, and unlock some cool little perks. And we hope to do some more cool things in 2023 with our Patreon of VIP. So get on board right now, mashmatters.com/support. Well, another episode in the books, Jeff.
Another one down and 643 more to go. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen.
Whew. I need to carb up.
Yeah, carb up. Carb up. Yeah, I'm pouring myself a martini and some carbs, and we're going to go to work.
That would be a carbtini, wouldn't it?
Carbtini, yes, I like it.
Carbtini, yes.
Mash Matters Carbtinis.
I think we're onto something here.
I like it.
All right, until next time, here's looking up your old address.